Hi all. The goal is to finish pages 780 to 782, which would finish up 19.1. So let's begin the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Victory in World War II brought few rewards to the Soviet people. Stalin continued his ruthless policies. He filled labor camps with enemies of the state and seemed ready to launch new purges when he died in 1953. Soviet communism. In the Soviet Union, the government controlled most aspects of public life. Communists valued obedience, discipline, and economic security. They sought to spread their communist ideology or value systems and beliefs around the globe. The Soviet Union also aimed to spread its command economy to other countries. In a command economy, the government makes most economic decisions. A huge bureaucracy, rather than supply and demand, decide what to produce, how much, and for whom. Government planners in Moscow often had little knowledge of local conditions. The government owned most of the property. Collectivized agriculture remained so unproductive that the Soviet Union often had to import grain to feed its people. Nor could Russia's command economy match the free market economies of the West in producing consumer goods. Since workers had lifetime job security, they had little incentive or reason to produce better quality goods. Stalin's successors. Now, a successor is somebody who comes after. So the person that followed Stalin is leader of the Soviet Union. After Stalin's death in 1953, Nikita Khrushchev emerged as the new Soviet leader. In 1956, he shocked top Communist Party members when he publicly denounced Stalin's abuse of power. Khrushchev maintained the Communist Party's tight political control, but he closed prison camps and eased censorship. He called for a peaceful coexistence with the West. Now, he definitely did not always feel that way, and he was leader of the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis, so keep that in mind. Khrushchev's successor, Leonid Brezhnev, had held power from the mid-1960s until he died in 1982. Under Brezhnev, dissidents, which are people who criticize the government, faced arrest and imprisonment. Dissidents resist. Despite the risk of harsh punishment, some courageous people dared to criticize the government. Andrei Sakharov, a brilliant physicist, spoke out against human rights abuses. He was exiled to a remote Soviet city. Another critic, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, wrote a letter to a friend criticizing Stalin. He was sent to a prison camp. Under Khrushchev, he was released and wrote fictional works that drew on his experiences in Soviet prison camps. His writings were banned in the Soviet Union, and in 1974, he was deported to West Germany. Despite the government's actions, Sakharov and Solzhenitsyn inspired others to resist communist repression and demand greater freedom. And remember, how did the Soviets respond to any challenges, especially in the beginning of the Cold War, to their authority? They brought in tanks and killed anybody that led or as many people that participated in resistance movements as they could. Okay, and finally, the United States in the Cold War. The Cold War was not just a military rivalry. It was also a competition between two contrasting economic and political value systems. Unlike the communist countries, the democratic capitalist countries led by the United States gave citizens the freedom to make economic and political choices. These nations valued freedom and prosperity. They held that economic freedom and free market principles helped improve the human condition, especially compared to the command economies of the communist world. Free markets. While communist countries had command economies, capitalist countries had market economies. In market economies, producers and consumers, not the government, make economic decisions. Prices are based on supply and demand in a free market. Property is privately owned. Producers compete to offer the best products for the lowest prices. By deciding what to buy, consumers ultimately decide which products are produced. In a free enterprise system, producers who win consumers' business make profits and grow. The United States is basically a market economy. However, the United States and Western Europe have what can be called mixed economies because their governments have an economic role. Where do you see that? You see that in things like there being a minimum wage. That's a government sort of interfering in the free market. You see it with overtime or 40-hour work weeks or any of those things. Those worker protection things are generally the government being involved in the economy. So it is not a pure market economy. The Cold War at home. And if you're looking at the picture, you see a bunker that was a bomb shelter that would have been built during the Cold War. I think there may have been one under the school. I'm not quite sure. If your parents grew up here, they might know. The Cold War at home. Early in the Cold War, fierce anti-communists in the United States warned that Soviet agents were operating everywhere within the country. The House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, led a campaign to identify supposed communist sympathizers. In the early 1950s, Senator Joseph McCarthy charged many innocent citizens with harboring communist sympathies. Government probes produced little evidence of subversion. Eventually, the Senate condemned McCarthy's reckless behavior, but not before his charges in the investigations of the HUAC had ruined the careers of thousands of Americans. The fear of a nuclear war also affected Americans. Some families built fallout shelters where they could hide in the event of a nuclear bomb. Schools conducted air raid drills in which children were taught to duck under their desks. It's called duck and cover, and in the notes you'll see the video ad that used to play to convince you to do this. And I actually remember ducking and covering under the desks as a kid. I guess school desks will protect you from nuclear fallout. Who knew, right? Oh, wait. Although these measures would not have protected children in a nuclear attack, the drills reflected the widespread fear of a nuclear war. So maybe hiding under the desks wouldn't have actually protected you. So I have no idea why we actually did it. Okay, bye. That is all for section 19.1. Make sure that you look at the notes and read through them, and then you would be ready to do any assignment that would come after 19.1, and I'll let you know in Google Classroom which ones those would be. Bye.